Welcome, everyone. Beauty will save the world, we hear very often on Instagram pages, or Tumblr blogs or whatever. It's a quote that gets thrown around quite a bit, and it is as meaningless at this point as it is overused. As you know, it's taken from Dostoevsky's The Idiot, and the protagonist, Mishkin, depending on the translation, throws out this statement. But the fact that we use this almost as a slogan today should perhaps invite us to think after rather what it is that beauty is and what it is that the world is. Now, and also this won't be a lecture or anything on Dostoevsky, but just a few thoughts on why perhaps this has become a slogan and what this might entail. Now, if beauty is simply, as we understand it, subjective, a matter of taste, totally personal, something that is up to the individual's taste, as I said before, or your own personal judgment, hence there is no standard, no universality, no objectivity to beauty. Or, of course, on the other extreme, where beauty is simply universal and we have to abandon ourselves to this highest ideal of beauty, of an abstraction ultimately. It seems that there are only these two, for the most part. Perhaps I'm speaking, maybe I'm oversimplifying here, but it seems that this is where basically we are. And especially if we consider beauty as only aesthetic in the contemporary sense of the word aesthetic, which is about, again, subjectively pleasing to someone, then beauty will not save the world. Now, we also have to ask the question, what does saving mean and what does the world mean? If world, again, is just a collection of objects or a receptacle into which objects are placed, well, then let's take the example of Venice, the city of Venice, the original Venice, not the multiplicity of copies and simulations and simulacra of the city of Venice that are now out there. The most prominent one might be the Venetian in Las Vegas. Now, Venice is, by many standards, perhaps most people would think that Venice is beautiful. But is Venice able to save itself? It does not seem as such, because Venice at this point is almost emptied out of Venetians. There are almost no citizens left who live in Venice, because mass tourism over the decades has led to turning Venice into a theme park. I recently went to Lake Garda, which is in the north of Italy, to a place called Sirmione, which is a tiny town or village, rather, in the south of the lake, and it's on a peninsula. There used to be, for millennia, actually, the Romans settled there, and there were monasteries. There still are a couple of churches left, but for the most part, it's now a place for tourists, and not only tourists, but really day tourists. So Chesterton supposedly once said, the traveler comes to see, but the tourist comes to see what he wants to see, what he desires to see. So the prefigured, preformated, already pre-lived experiences. In Italy you eat gelato or you eat pizza, and after a couple of days there you realize that every gelateria sells the same ice cream, and the pizza dough is made in a factory hundreds of miles away, and the ingredients are substandard, and serving only the taste buds of the massified human being. And it's still aesthetically a pleasing place, just as is Venice, but there's no life left. As I was walking around, I took no pictures, but I saw many people taking pictures and also filming, almost like perhaps even live streaming with their phones, as I'm doing right now, either filming themselves, which is completely bizarre, as they walk around, or filming the place. But I was wondering, what are you filming? You're not filming, there's no city life. There's nothing there that you could film that would take place without tens of thousands of people walking through this place every day for half an hour or 2 hours, consuming what they deem is Italian. An Aperol Spritz here, a gelato over here, and then a slice of pizza, which apparently now it's called in Italy prodotti tipici, typical products, whatever that's supposed to mean. Now, this is a beautiful place, just as Venice, or the city center of Florence, which basically at this point also is just made up of hotels and Airbnbs and has almost no city life left. The newly elected mayor of Florence is building a coalition with other European mayors of major cities who are swarmed with mass tourism. So has beauty saved them? No. These cities are not saved by beauty. They are, in fact, their beauty is what is destroying them, because it's attracting mass tourism. And so we have to ask, what is a world? A world is a meaningful horizon that is already meaningful in light of the ancestry of that very place, and hence the future that is born out of this place. There's an extreme case in Italy also where the city of Aquila has been voided of its citizens. So citizens had to leave the place, and they built a sort of American-style suburbs around it to preserve the ancient city. Perhaps something similar will happen to Siena, one of the most important medieval and Renaissance towns of Italy. It has happened in Assisi, which is also almost bereft entirely of any citizens, and only there for tourists and pilgrims, of course, in that case as well. Now, so in the case of these cities, and this is not an arbitrary example at all, because the city is where human beings organize their life in the most meaningful way. And of course, only if the city is well governed can the city also have a healthy, normal, good relationship with the countryside, with the farmers, etc. Now, will beauty save the world? No, it might actually destroy the world, especially if we think of beauty either as too abstract, too universalistic, or on the other hand, as purely subjectivistically, solipsistically, almost aesthetically pleasing, etc. I would rather hope that, and of course hope is a poor man's bread, but it is time to perhaps reconsider how we travel, where we travel, why we travel at all, if we travel in the first place, and also how cities can remain what they are, and that when you travel, you are a guest. The city does not cater to you and your expectations. And perhaps that needs to have severe restrictions on how many hotel beds there should be in every place. But it is now visible in so many places around Germany and Italy, especially countries that I'm very familiar with, but also England, of course, where now normal cities are all of a sudden becoming tourist hotspots for just about anyone from anywhere. And it all collapses down into mass tourism. And of course, these places are some of the most beautiful places. For example, my hometown, Augsburg, the only Renaissance city outside of Italy, with the really only Renaissance courtyard that you'll ever find that can be called such outside of Italy, built by Jakob Fugger. But about 10 years ago, there were almost no tourists, and now it's swarming with them. And also, there's something that's changed with tourism, where it used to be seasonal, and now it seems to be absolutely constant. And there's a never-ending inflow of tourists who aren't really even there. What I can see is people walking through the cities, taking pictures mindlessly, almost filming, almost live streaming anywhere they go, and never really arriving at the place. And very often, again, these places are the places that are deemed beautiful. They are aesthetically pleasing. And we've all seen the phenomena of what the most Instagrammable place of a certain area, etc. Those get overcrowded with people because they have to go there for some reason to take that perfect Instagram picture without ever really being there. And I know that the irony of me filming myself here while I'm making this video, and I had thought about doing this while I was in Italy, and I decided against it. To come back and with some distance say what I want to say, but it has only gotten that sentiment has only gotten stronger with me now. That again, beauty will not save the world. We don't have to abandon ourselves to this highest or a highest ideal of beauty, nor do we have to assume that beauty is in fact only and purely subjectivistic and whatever is aesthetically pleasing to just about anyone. We need to find a middle ground again, and yes, this will also mean that certain things are not beautiful and certain things, etc., will be excluded from it, and that is perfectly fine and absolutely necessary to happen again. Not everything everywhere all at once is true and fine and wonderful. So, or else what we risk is that Baudrillard ultimately wins out, where the simulacrum is ultimately more beautiful. And in the case of Venice, for example, it's the distilled version of what is Venice supposed to be. So that we only consider the places to go in Venice, and where we say, oh, it's the Gran Canale, it's St. Mark's Campanile, it's the Bridge of Sighs, etc. It's the Rialto bridge. That's only that is Venice, and once we've distilled it down to those elements, we could almost say, then we can create a simulacrum of Venice that never existed, and it is a simulacrum because there is no original of it. A simulation would be a copy, but once it's just distilled down to these places. But especially with Venice, it's a place which is untraveled. You shouldn't travel to because it's overcrowded with people all the time. The only time to travel to it was really during COVID, because that's when finally the city emptied out, and there was a perfect time between when the all too heavy-handed measures hadn't been brought in yet, and travel was more or less accepted, but the cities were empty, and Venice is all the back alleys, is the bridges you don't know the names of, is when you get lost in the mazes of Venice, and you realize there's beautiful, genuinely amazing city that is so close to death, always about to drown, and that keeps itself up. Only the Italian spirit could have built Venice, obviously. And there's a wonderful book also I should mention by Salvatore Settis on Venice, which is If Venice Dies, or in the original Italian, Se Venezia Muore. So to remember, no, beauty on its own won't save the world. But ugliness will also destroy the world. So we shouldn't become all too postmodern either. So just perhaps when you travel next or so, when you make any plans, make yourself aware that you are a guest for a brief moment, and that no place should cater to you. Quite the opposite. You should be willing to be changed by the place that you travel to, and if you aren't, just stay in your air-conditioned house in the suburbs. So will beauty save the world? Again, no. We need to find a middle ground between an all too empty abstraction of beauty and the purely subjectivistic matter of taste assumption about beauty, and instead find that beauty is the medium, the beautiful is the medium through which what something is genuinely shows forth, or shines forth, shines through. Hence, it's so devastating to come to these cities, because what they are is really only still there as a remnant. And you can't really find the place, the locality of Florence any longer, which is devastating, really. And Nietzsche says, worse than the Vernichtung, worse than annihilation is desertification. So Vernichtung, annihilation, means that maybe there's war and a place gets flattened, unfortunately. But to Nietzsche, what is even worse than this is desertification. And this, by the way, leads to questions of how we should preserve or conserve, or should we preserve at all? Because it seems that there is this tendency towards conserving for the sake of conservation, turning cities into museums of their own. That has never been the way in which we live. We could, and to forget everything is not the answer either, but instead it should be alive. When I think back to traveling to Delphi and Athens last year, as a matter of fact, I think the Acropolis should be shut down. It should be closed off to the public. If anything, these are sacred places, so they should be places of worship again. And the same is true for Delphi. The temple of Apollo should be a temple of Apollo and nothing else. It's the gods indwell these places still, but not if you've got hordes of tourists trampling around for no other reason than to cross it off their bucket list. So, yeah, well, beauty on its own won't save anything. Perhaps, of course, this was also Dostoevsky's intention. And beauty without virtue, beauty without the good, the question of what it means to be good, to act good in the world, etc., again, is void. So, with this, I leave you and wish you all the best, and also that perhaps you start thinking more what it means to be a traveler, what it means to travel at all in the first place. When you come to a new place and a place you don't know, how that, if anything, it should change you, transform you. Thank you.